Welcome to Bible 365, where we learn and grow in God's Word 365. Today, we got a special treat. Usually, we're in God's Word reading it, but today, we're going to be working on it. What I have here is my mother's Bible. Now, this is her daily driver, so she has used this Bible for a lot of years, and it has a lot of wear on it. She doesn't want to get rid of it. She wants to continue to use it, and I completely understand that. So what we're going to do today is to do a brand new cover on this. Inside, it also has an area right here where the part of the signature has, well, let me rephrase that, not signature, the text block has come apart. And so it's going to have to be reattached. The cover is just very worn from a lot of years of use. Even the ribbon has been torn quite a bit. So it's going to need a new ribbon as well. So that's what I'm going to be doing on today's episode, is doing a Bible rebind. So come along and let's see how it's done together. Today on Bible 365. We're ready to get started, and the first thing that we need to do is to just go over and inspect the Bible and see what kind of condition it's in. The exterior is not in good shape, but that's okay because that is one of the things that we're going to replace this with. It's a soft cover Bible, but we are going to turn this into a hardcover. Another thing we need to do is get a new ribbon because this bad boy has seen better days. So, the next thing we also need to do is check for any damage. Now, I've already gone through the Bible and found that there are two places where it has come undone, which also brings to mind another thing. In this particular case, here we can see that this whole thing is just glued on. So, what that means is this Bible was not sewn. So it's not sewn into signatures. So what that means is it's got to be dealt with in a little bit different way. Typically, you would remove the cover and clean off all the glue, do any extra repairs like re-sewing signatures together, and then re-gluing it and the whole bit. This one's a little different. Since it is just a straight glue, I'm not going to be able to do that. So I am not going to remove all of the factory glue. Now, some may not think that's the best way to go. However, this is extremely thin paper, and it's got well over 1,000 pages. So for me to put this in a book press of some sort, keep it all together, and make sure I can clean it all off with not a single page moving, is not likely to happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off this process by gluing this back together on here, and also where my secondary ribbon is here is going to be the second place it's got to be fixed. So that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to start off by fixing it. After I fix that, then I'm going to move to removing the cover and then seeing what else I need to do, removing the ribbon, and I may try to remove the headbands if I can. I do have some new headband here that is very similar to the old, so trying to keep it about the same. So let's get started. Now I'm going to use some parchment paper. Wax paper works. Also scrap paper as well, which I have some right here. Anything scrap related works good. So what I want to do is glue inside of here, and I want to get a tad bit on the pages themselves, so that way the pages themselves will also stick together as well. But I don't want too much of it. So that's what these are going to be for. I'm dropping my new ribbon. Now I've picked out two thin brushes here. I got these at the old Wally World, so I don't need expensive brushes for this. A lot of times I'll try to clean them up, but they will not cleaning them after a little bit. So I just use cheap brushes, and they always work well for me. So first I'm going to get this lined up where I want it for how much glue, and then I'm going to put a weight on it so that way it doesn't move. And I'm just using regular PVA glue. Okay, I got the first one gluing up, and I'm going to let that sit in the press for a little bit, and then I'll come back and I'll do the second one, and then we'll get started on the case. Excellent. Both of the repairs are now done and looking great. Can't even see where the repair was made, so that's couldn't be any better than that. Okay, so the next step on this is we're going to remove the cover. Now I want to try to maintain as much stability from the original binding as possible. So there is a line right here where this right here was glued onto the top and onto here, so that way you have a good binding between the case and the text block. Excuse me. So what I'm going to do is on the front and the back I'm going to get this cut off. So let's just get to chopping. Okay, now we can see some of our glue, headbands, tailbands, and super. So let's see if we can get some of this one off. We're not going to keep this. Okay, now we can see some of our glue, headbands, tail bands, and the super. So let's see if we can get some of this cleaned off, because we're not going to keep this. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to do with it is I'm going to put this into the press and see if we can get some more of this super and excess glue pulled off. Now we have to be very careful with this one, because since this is just a straight up glue spine and not a sewn spine, if I go too far into it, then I could end up just having the whole thing break apart, and then that's going to be even more work trying to get it fixed. So let's get this into the book press and go to the next step. If you decide to get into bookbinding yourself, be careful using a knife, because you can go overboard with it. There are some other tools like spatulas that are very small that can be a really great job for getting in between the signatures and all when you're trying to do this. Plus, there are other things like using PVA glue, where you put the PVA glue on top of it and then wrap it in some plastic and let it sit for a little bit. It can actually help the glue to actually become loosened up. And that might sound contradictory to what you would think, but the PVA has moisture in it, and that moisture causes the old glue to then become moist again, making it easier to remove. Now, as you can see, this right here came off really easily. So now the next step is going to be to reinforce the spine. So I'm going to put some new super on here. I have some brand new. I'm going to glue that down, and then to give this some extra strength, I'm also going to do an Oxford hollow on this. So let's get some super on here next. Okay, to find out how big of a piece that I want, I'm going to use this piece of spine backer that wasn't glued down to give a measurement. Now, I don't want to have it come all the way to the end, because when I go to put the new headband and tailband on, that's going to get glued onto right here. So in this case, well, let's do this. Okay, that should be just about right. And I forgot one thing too. Well, let's just do this. I am going to want it about this same thickness, so we're going to give it about an extra 2 centimeters. That should be good. About right there. Now there's no hard and fast rule on the exact width of your super, but you do want it to be covering the spine minus your head and tail bands, and you want it over enough to where there's going to be enough to glue to, so that way when you start connecting the case to it, there'll be plenty there to grab a hold of and hold it nice and tight. But you don't want it to be so much either, because then that's going to potentially create a line in there, and that's not going to look very good either. So next step is we're going to get some PVA all across here to help re-strengthen this, and then we'll put the super on, put another layer on top of here, and then we're going to have to just let it dry. And this is just regular PVA glue. Okay, now I'm just going to let this dry. Alright, that glue has dried. Now for the next steps, we're going to glue on the ribbon, and in this case I've got 2 ribbons for bookmarks, and I've got the head and tail bands. So let's get those glued on. Now while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and cut the headband and tailband and glue that on. We're just going to square off the end. Alright, that's all glued on, so now we're just going to wait for the glue to dry. Okay, it's time to create the Oxford Hollow, which is really nothing more than just taking some craft paper and folding it over and twice, and then creating just a tube basically is all we're going to do. And then we're going to go glue it to the spine, and the reason for this is to give the spine some more strength. And when we're doing this, there's 2 ways to do it. You can glue it on the side where there's 2 pieces, or you can glue it on the side where there's a single piece. The more layers, the stiffer the spine is going to be. So it's your choice how you want to do it. And it all just depends on your project. So anyways, let's get started doing this. Okay, first thing, I'm just going to get the length of it, so I'm going to go to basically just shy of our headband and just shy of our tailband. So it's going to be right here. And here. Okay, next thing to do is going to be to find the width of it, and because I don't like to measure, what I'm going to do is just make a crease all the way down, and then I'm going to fold it. Then I'm going to do the same thing again. Try to get it right there on the edge and make a crease. And then I'm going to fold it again. And that's my hollow. Now I'll cut off the excess. So now you can see we just have one piece folded, folded again, and now when you look at it, we've got a hollow in there. So now we're just going to glue this edge to this edge. Now, in order to try to keep this thing from curling up too much, I'm going to be kind of light on the glue. And I'm just using my regular PVA that I'm doing. Now, if I was doing a restoration of an old Bible, not one that gets used heavily, then I would use, what do we call that? Archival glue. And I have archival glue, but this one right here is going to get heavily used, and it's not meant to be something that we keep around for a long time. This one is a workhorse. Now it's important to make sure that you still have the tube, because you could easily glue it together, and then that kind of defeats the purpose of doing this. So now I'm just going to put it under a little bit of weight. And I'll give that a little bit of time to dry. When I come back, I'm going to glue it onto the spine. Okay, just putting some parchment paper on here so that way I can put a little bit of weight on it. and this way it'll glue down and dry well, but at the same time nothing will stick with the parchment paper. So now it's just time to wait again. Everything is now dried and is ready for the next step. So what's going to happen next is we're going to take some chipboard, gray board, however you want to say it, and we're going to figure out the sizing for this. So in order to help me do this, I've got a 3D printed square. This is used for clamping a lot of times, so if you're gluing something up you can actually clamp it. But what I'm going to do is bring it to the edge of my workbench, and I got some clamps. Okay, so now what I can do is put my board up to here and put my Bible up to here. And so now this is going to give me a nice reference point, so this way the board stays straight and the Bible will stay straight as well. It may not be absolute perfection, but this is going to give me a good reference point. So now, get my pen. So what I want for my width is to measure from here to here, and you want that measurement exactly. However, I like to not measure as much as possible. So by having this corner clamp here and everything butted up against it, what I can do is take my pen and make the mark. So now I have my width without having to measure. The next thing is I need the height, but I need the height plus 6 millimeters. So what I've got here is a 6 millimeter wide jig. I bought this off of Amazon. It came in a pack. So I'm going to put this up against here and butt it right up against the Bible. Now I'm going to make a mark. So now I have the exact width of the text block and the height plus 6 millimeters. That 6 millimeters is going to give us a reveal, a 3 millimeter reveal on the top and the bottom once we get it all done. So now this piece is ready to be cut, but we need a bottom to it. So now we're going to do the same thing again for the bottom. Okay, now we have this. So now we also need a spine. Now, I've chosen to use this manila folder because it's cardstock and it's of a good thickness, and instead of using a solid piece, I'm going to use this. So, but what I'm going to do is put this inside of here, like so, and get a mark off of this, because this will be easier to make a mark off of. So, we can now even use this, because the way that I've been shown is to have the height of the text block plus 1 board thickness. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to press down on it and I'm going to make a mark this way. And to get my height, it needs to be the same height as this. So for this, I'm just going to move it over and butt it up against the side there. And now I'm going to have my extra, let's do this a better way. I'm trying to make this one harder than it should be. I'm just going to use this, make a mark, and that should be my actual mark right there. Anything I can do to make it easier, that's what I like to do. right, these are cut, and we can take a quick look at them, see what it looks like. Looks like I got it about right. Now, as I said, for the spine I'm going to be using this material because I'm using the Oxford Hollow, so I don't want it to be just solid up against there, but I cut this so this way it could be my template for this. So now we're going to cut this out. To make it a little easier, I'm just going to cut out a section so that way it's easier to work with. Okay, now we have our spine piece, and this piece is going to be what's glued to the leather, and we've got our front and back. So now it's time to get out our leather. It's time for the next step. Now that we've got everything, we've got the leather rough cut out and the pieces are all cut, so now it's time to glue everything together. So pretty simple process. We're just going to glue the first piece on, the front or the back, it doesn't really matter at this moment. And then I'm going to use my straight edge here. Once I get the first piece glued down, set it up to be a at a reference line, and then what I've got is I've got two 8mm spacers here, so I'm going to put the spacers in between there. I'll glue up the next piece, the next spacer, glue up the next piece, having everything up against here as my reference line. Then once we get it all glued on, then I'll come through with a 15mm spacer and we will trim it to size all the way around along with the corners. So let's get started. All right, Now that that's done, now the next step is going to be to fold in the edges here, and then we'll get it put in the book press and let it dry. Okay, excuse me. Now we've got it all glued up, so now it's time to go into the book press. I'm just having a little bit of a tough time because the leather is a natural material, and so it's going to behave differently, of course, across the hide. And on this particular side over here, even though the thickness is actually the same on both sides, the side over here is a little bit stiffer. So that's why I'm sitting here using these and kind of fighting with it, and just have this on here so that way I can get it to stay down long enough to get it into the book press. So now this is all it's left to do for right now. After this, we're going to be getting into some adding in some items for the outside. We're going to be taking this to the laser and doing some of that too, to put on what my mother wants on the front and the back cover of it. So time to let the glue dry. All right, came out looking very good. It's nice and flat, so that's something that we want to see. Whenever you're doing any kind of gluing up like this, what can happen is it can actually potato chip on you, because as the glue dries, it will actually pull. So since we have the leather on one side and there's nothing on the other side right now, what it'll do is, as it's trying to dry, it's no more moisture in there, it'll literally do this. It'll start to pull. And so that is no bueno. So, but in this case, I left it in there longer than I usually would. It also helps that since I built this new press, it is got a lot of surface area, which is the reason why I did this, because this is able to sit in here and have, you know, a huge amount of surface area, where when I've put it into this style right here, this right here only has like this much surface area, so it's harder to get it flat. I do put some wood in there, but still just has not worked as well as this right here has. So the next thing on this is going to be taking it downstairs, and my mother has decided on what type of I call it decoration on the outside of it, what she wants having written on there. So I'm going to laser that on. So I'm going to take this downstairs. So that's the next thing for this. One more thing that I forgot to do while I was preparing the text block, and that is to do end papers. Now, one thing I'm doing differently with the end papers is I have this piece right here, and what it is this is connected to this end sheet, and she's got her name on it, a little thing here. It's got her name on it and everything, and so I want to be able to keep that if I can. So instead of taking a larger piece of cardstock, folding it over, putting it in, and then gluing it down to here, I'm not going to do that. This is already good and sturdy, and since this right here is still part of this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, put it into here, and actually glue this to the inside of this flap. I'm going to do that on the front and the back. So this piece, when I go to case it, is going to be on here like so, and so it'll be like this, and then when you open it up, this will be attached to here, and then you'll still get to see this this page right here with her name on it. So that's what I'm trying to keep. So this is a little bit different than a standard, but there's nothing wrong with that. I still have a great amount of stability and surface area for connecting the two of them together. So that's what I'm going to do next, is to get these glued on, and I'm not going to trim them yet either. What I'm going to do is just glue one side on, flip it over, glue the other side on, and then I'm going to put it in the book press to let it set, and then I'm going to go down and start working on this. So let's get started. Just going to use this rest of this manila folder right here as a way to protect this, so that way I can get glue in the area where I want it and not in the other area. Alright, the lasering has been done. So now we've got the cover all lasered on. Got a little something on the back and on the spine. That came out looking really good. So now that that is done, the next thing to do is we've got the end papers here, which are all glued on. Now one thing I did do was I checked on it, and when I did, it was starting to adhere to this part right here that I didn't want it to. So I did pull it back out, and then I've got these little aluminum sheets right here, which I stuck right in between there, so that way it could finish drying without adhering to the other part here. So I did do that. And for when I go to case this, which I'm going to do here in just a little bit, I also got some of these blotting papers, which you can find these on Amazon. It even says that it's good for if you like doing flower pressing, and it's supposed to help absorb a lot of the moisture and everything, so that way it doesn't, say, have this get glued to this portion right here. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to trim the end sheets, and like I say, I know that this may seem a little bit odd to some folks the way I've done this, but like I said, I wanted to keep this former end paper, if you will, and since I cut off the part that was actually part of the cover, and then also on the back of it as well, having the same thing right here as well. So I wanted to keep those. So there's multiple different ways to do things. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my little scalpel, and I'm just going to cut all along the Bible here to be able to get it all trimmed up, so then that way we can then case it. Alright, looks like everything is doing pretty good. So now it's time to case. So put it on here, get it centered up, and then I'm going to fold it flat here, turn it up, put the glue on here, lay this down, and then fold it over, do the same thing. Then we'll put it in the book press and have to let it sit. So then after that, then we can come back and actually put some conditioner on the leather. But that's going to be our next thing to do. I'm putting this inside of here so that way I don't get anything else messed up. All right, now we wait again. If you ever think about getting into bookbinding, it's an awesome and rewarding hobby to do, but keep this in mind. There's going to be a lot of time waiting while glue is drying. So now I have to wait for this, but when I come back, I'll get the leather all conditioned and ready to go, and then we'll be ready for the final shots. All right, the Bible is now complete, and it's looking pretty awesome. So I'm pretty happy with how everything came out. The only thing that I really want to improve on is I did get this a little bit off. I should have been down a little bit, but everything else came out okay, and I'm pretty happy. I've already shown it to my mother, and she's looking forward to being able to use it. She likes it, so that is really awesome. So I thank you so much for coming along on this different video than usually I have on the Bible 365 channel, but you know, it is all about the Bible. So this is obviously being able to take care of our Bibles, and I've got more of these coming up in the future. So I pray that you are blessed, and I thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see y'all again next time here on Bible 365.